All right, let's call this episode 68. Yes, 68 of the Athletic Philosopher. Shout out Jaromir Jagr, the legend. I don't think there's any athlete who's worn 68 like you have. And we all know why you wore 68 from the Czech against the commies. We all know this. So shout out Jaromir Jagr, a hero from my youth, as we continue to move up in numbers on this podcast. So I want to thank everybody for paying attention. Again, I think I'm kind of getting a hang of this podcasting thing. There's something you can do. You can subscribe if you like what you're listening to. You can leave me a 5-star review. All these nice, fun things. I also, in these podcasts, talk a lot about what I do in terms of coaching, one-on-one coaching, group coaching, where I take fitness coaching and life coaching, and we intertwine them in this beautiful mix that just sees people smash physical goals, smash life goals, break out of limiting patterns in mind, in body, and spirit, and, figure out how to live authentically and genuinely as the best version of yourself. So if you're ever interested in connecting with me, looking for some advice, some tips, some help, some guidance, looking for a community, looking for a coach, looking for a mentor, any of those things, and you're gravitating towards the message that I'm putting out, not just in this episode, but in all the episodes of this podcast, you can use the contact information that you can find in the show notes to get in contact with me, and we can talk about what that looks like. I think I'm getting pretty good at this little introduction thing, except for you don't know who I am. So I am the host, your humble host, Jordan Goldstein, former university professor in sport history, sport philosophy, sport psychology, sport sociology. Complications arose many times at the academy in terms of things like integrity, freedom, honor, truth, respect, dignity, minor details. So once you clash over those, you don't really stay. So we've been out of the university now for, oh my gosh, almost over 3 years since I taught my last class. It's kind of wild. And as I mentioned, what do? Well, we do the coaching thing, and the dad thing, and the support thing. So it's all gravy. One more little note for those listening and watching the podcast. I am live streaming this right now on X, which I've been doing for the past, I'd say maybe like 5 or 6 podcast episodes. And it provides a little bit of fun energy. I'm always doing these improvisationally anyways. So why not just make more fun, bring more people in. So thank you for the people who are watching and will be filtering in and out on the Twitter live stream. For the Twitter people, if you guys have a question, I'm going to put this in the chat right now. If you have a question or a comment, feel free to interrupt, and I'm happy to attend to anything that is in this chat. If you have any questions or comments, please let me know, and I'll answer live. Okay, let's see where this goes. All right, so while this is going to be improvisational, this is one of those very few times in the podcast where I have a semblance of notes, but I have a really strong idea of what we are talking about. And today we are going to talk on competition. So the last few podcast episodes have been stories and experiences of mine prepping for competition, talking about why I do competitions, and recapping what's going on in those competitions. And why I want to talk about competition, and particularly like removing a little bit of the personal element here and more philosophizing or theorizing or getting exploratory with ideas around competition today. It's related to a conversation I was having last week with my coaching group, which is called The Temple. And we kicked off our very first cohort call for a 6-week cohort that I'm running within the group in winter that is just alerting us to the spiritual dimensions of physical activity and allowing us to go deeper in terms of belief and practice when it comes to exercising for spiritual gains, which is what the group is all about. And as we were discussing sort of the spiritual elements and how they relate to each of us individually, the conversation got steered towards competition and, in effect, echoing a lot of my initial thoughts on competition when I re-engaged in my, we'll call it athletic lifestyle in my mid to late 20s. And that was this idea that the competition takes us out of the spiritual realm when it comes to exercise, physical activity, training. And that was a general theme that was percolating in the group, was that we love the training, we love challenging ourselves, but the competition tilts us away. It tilts us away from the internal goods that we're aiming after, especially in the group, and it tilts us towards the external elements of sport, which, to be fair, tend to take us away from, right, that internal signal. Now, this was a really cool opportunity for me to insert my own experience with racing and to effectively, say, well, yes, I agree, and I practiced that way for 8-9 years of trail running where I didn't sign up for one single race. All I did was run in the forest by myself, maybe a few times with friends. And I specifically remember having races that I could sign up for. So I would go every weekend to this one provincial park back in Ontario. And they used to run trail races every September in that park. And I would see the signs, right? I think it was like Chase the Coyote, something like that. You see, 4 weeks, we're having a race. 3 weeks, we're having a race. So I didn't sign up the first year, and then all of a sudden I'm running the opposite direction against the people that are racing. I'm out for the fun run. They're there for race day, which is kind of a fun vibe if you can ever get that to line up. But same thing, next year, I knew it was the race. I'm already going to be there, and I had this little pull to maybe sign up, but I still didn't, right? And it wasn't until I competed with my friends, with my homies, right? My first race being in Indianapolis in 2023, the Full Mo 50K, that I started to change my attitude around competition. So what I want to do today is, first, I think I will describe why I was reticent to compete. And I think I've talked about this before, but not in a hermetically sealed podcast, just on the ideal and idea of competition. So I want to start off with why I think the guys in the group were hesitant, because it's exactly the same reasons I believe that I was hesitant. So I want to spell those out. And then I want to break them apart using philosophy. That's, I think, how this is going to go. So I got a couple of interesting ideas from philosophy and psychology, from history, that I think are going to tear apart the weak idea that competition is going to bring out the worst elements of us, even when we are aimed, what we will say is at the best value of sport and physical activity, which would be like on character development, on spiritual knowing, and on personal transcendence. So before I do that, I must have some motivation. Please give me the chance to just have a little bit of motivation. Fantastic. Okay, so the hesitancy towards competition, and this was expressed in a bunch of different ways by people in the group, and I'm not going to translate what they said. I'm just going to speak from my own experience here, and then we'll get into some of the ideas. So why hesitant about competition? Because we tend to awaken the sleeping giant inside of us that is goal oriented, that is outcome focused. And there's an element of bringing that part of ourselves back in such a strong way that gives us pause. Like there's some element of our character that competition brings out that we are trying to actively improve, actively work on. And potentially, which was my case, competition might be a negative source of energy and temptation in your life for you to start tilting towards negative emotions, negative actions, negative behaviors, and then ultimately proving to be a negative component in your life, right? Growing up in athletics and sport and competing in everything, I just hated to lose. Like hyper competitive would be an understatement for how I viewed everything. Everything was a contest, everything was a game, and I had to win everything. And when I didn't win everything, I was not a happy person. I was angry, I was frustrated. I would blame the world, blame all the external things that I could, very rarely looking inward at what I could have done. And I really did not like that part of me. And it became apparent as my own athletic career was winding down through a series of unfortunate and horrific leg injuries that I suffered playing my last 2 years of highly competitive soccer. When you're up on the couch 2 years in a row, you start to rethink things. You start to reorient your priorities. And I was in a stage of my life where I was transitioning away from athletics and into music and into writing music and performing music. So this all kind of fit. But when I was re-entering athletic training, and starting to run a lot, and people were starting to suggest to me, why don't you do a race? Why don't you do a race? Why don't you do a race? My answer is always, I don't want to do a race. I don't want to do a race. The running is just for me. I don't need the competition. I don't need the external validation. I don't need to show up and subject myself to the start time and the finish time and crossing the lines and in between the lines. I don't need to subject myself to that. But that was a bit of a cope, and I began to understand what was really happening. And then I simply started to take that cope and present it as a justifiable and rationally thought out and pragmatic and mature mindset, which was, I have this hyper competitive past. I don't really like that part of me. I've worked hard to push it down so that it's not driving me in the next stage of my life. Like how often in the world, when you're a really goal oriented person and you sort of switch activities, you don't lose the goal orientation. Like the example would be, for me, I would have transferred my need to compete and win in sports to my need to compete in the academic realm. So competing for scholarships, competing against other students for the best grades, needing to get into the most prestigious of all the universities in terms of like undergrad and then grad school, publishing in the most prestigious of all the journals, right? Using competition in the intellectual sphere as a way to improve my status amongst the intellectual class, which I was not interested. I was so not interested. When I got into university, it was, I love knowledge. I'd love to be a prof, and I'm going to figure out what's the thing that I love to study the most so that I can just study it for the pure love of gaining the knowledge. And if I can find that, I know that I'm skilled, I'm talented, I can write, I'm smart, I can analyze, I'm brilliant at synthesizing. So if I can just like use the love of, and it turned out to be history, to fuel me through, then I'm going to end up getting the goals that I want, which were pretty simple goals. It was something like get your PhD before 30, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but in the academy, that's a gigantic deal, because if you think about all the years of schooling, 4-year undergrad, 1 to 2 years master's, minimum 4 years for your PhD. So you're talking like 7-8 years. And when are you entering school? 18, 19? So you might think, okay, so that puts you around 27, 28, but people take breaks. I took a year off, a year and a half off between school. And most people do not do their master's in a year. Most people take 2 to 3. Most people do not do their PhD in 4 years. It's usually 5, 6, 7 years to get your PhD. One guy, oh my gosh, one guy in my program, over 10 years as a grad student, over 10 years just getting his PhD. Crazy. So getting your PhD under 30, that's a big deal. Check, did that. I wanted to publish my own book, which I did. And it's somewhere here. I think it's up on this shelf. Here it is. Bam. Okay? And that was, I'm not bragging or anything here, but this is a talk on competition and goal orientation. So this is all it's all valid, right? So I had my dissertation. I turned it into an academic manuscript. Okay? So I had my own published book, solo author, before I was 35 in the academy. That is like gold star stuff, baby. I wanted to teach. I wanted to have a tenure track position, and I wanted to have tenure before I was 40, which in a sane world I would have had. But actually, I learned from some of my professor friends, you delay tenure as much as you can because it ups your pay. So it was like, all right, tenure by 40, but I'm going to decline it till maybe I'm like 45 so I can up my pay for the rest of my professor career. But like in a sane world, I would have had it. We don't live in a sane world. Like things happened at the university, so I'm not there anymore. But in a sane world, when you have a good publishing record in your field and the students love you, you tend to get tenure. We don't live in that world. So here I am talking to everybody now, which is way better. This is way better. So even though I was able to achieve, I didn't have a focus on achievement. I didn't have a focus on winning. I didn't have a focus on competing against other people. I just had this sense of bringing my best towards the activity and allowing that to build towards the achievement, which is important, which is very important. But a lot of people who are athletes who miss out on their sort of like getting to the next level, they just take that competitive edge and they put it into, well, now I'm going to be the best at business. I'm going to be the best at sales. I'm going to become a super fan for my team, right? Like this competitive drive gets channeled into all sorts of intriguing and interesting places if you used to train, if you were an athletic kid. And that is the kind of thing that a lot of people want to overcome, because eventually that goal orientation starts to ruin you. Like you recognize the goals don't really make you happy. You're kind of you're like the snake chasing his own, like the dog chasing his own tail. You're never going to catch it, right? And you just keep going around and around in circles, even if you're gaining achievements and you're winning in life and you're getting promoted and you're getting the bigger house. People feel empty. They feel empty chasing the goals and trying to win all the time. It's this all or nothing mindset where it's win or lose, losing not good, winning good. I'm going for the good. I'm driving hard for the good all the time. And a lot of people, like, they recognize that this is actually ruining the meaning and the purpose and the value of their life. They're missing out on the things that they truly value and that truly matter to them. Things like family time or personal development, right? Not skipping the gym anymore to make sure that the boss sees that you're working overtime type of vibe. So there's a real reluctance to give a little bit of space for this idea of, you're telling me to go back into a competitive situation. You're telling me, person who's trying to move away from goal orientation generally towards a process orientation, to go into the arena of goals, which is effectively the athletic arena, right? When you enter a race, start line, finish line, timer. First place, second place, third place, last place, didn't finish. So we're moving into the realm of outcomes, And that's going to tilt us to the external. And this is the tenor and the theme, where it's like, either I don't want to go into that arena because there's nothing there for me anymore, or I don't want to go into the arena because it's a temptation to bring out the worst parts of myself that I have worked diligently on to improve. And while that is a commendable attitude, it is incorrect. It is an incorrect attitude. It is just as big of a cope and an excuse to not go into the arena than I'm afraid of what the numbers are going to say. I don't want to sign up for the race because I'm afraid I'll be slow. I'm afraid it's going to look bad. I'm afraid of getting passed by people that don't have an athletic physique as me, and I don't think my ego can handle that. Whatever it is, you see people telling themselves, I can never do it. I won't be fast enough. Like, whatever, it doesn't matter. There's this world of competition, guard goes up. World of competition, guard goes up in the adult world, especially athletic competition. And I don't think that's necessarily incorrect either, because we look at the adults who have their lives taken over by, we'll call it amateur competition, and rightfully we say your priorities are wrong. Like, the person that trains, like, and it's not their job, like it is their job, and competes like it's their job, and is so serious about the time results and like the detailed specifications and making sure everything is optimized, and skipping out on the family and skipping out on work, like in order to chase the athletic dream and the athletic goal. Those people have their priorities way off base, because they're allowing the goal to determine the worth and the value and the meaning of the experience, because it's goal oriented. So that is not the kind of athletic competition that I'm going to promote, and that I'm going to use philosophy, psychology, and history to argue against. So I did this like for a minute or two in the group. So this is really directed to all my temple guys, but really to anybody out there who's struggling with this ideal of competition. Here's why we want to be in the arena. Here is why we want to be into the arena, okay? Number one, feedback loop to reality. Like, this is just my own thoughts on this. My coach and I, Zach Hummel, we talk about this all the time. And when I bring up the name of Zach Hummel and competition and athletics, I need everybody to listen. There are people who can compete, there are people who can train, and there are people who can excel. But there is a very small slice of people who can set a world record in anything. And there's a very small slice of people who can set a world record in an athletic context. And Zach is that guy. He set a world record in the deadlift for his size, for an amateur deadlift, in competition. Not just at the gym, but actually in a competition. Okay? Beast. And him and I talk a lot about utilizing physical training, hard physical challenges as feedback mechanisms for our contact and understanding of reality. I had a whole podcast, I think it's episode 48, where I was sort of piggybacking on his argument, and he sort of piggybacks on my argument, that being a practitioner of physical activity will allow you to not only like identify and merge with reality more accurately, but actually to begin shifting reality and changing reality itself, if you're a skilled enough practitioner at this, right? But without the competition, there's no feedback. The training itself is one kind of feedback, but the competition is a complementary style of feedback that is necessary, and that informs me about the value, the worth, and the meaning of the feedback in the training. Just like the training is going to provide me with the value and the meaning and the feedback for the race, they exist in a paradox together, the competition and the training. Like it's a chicken and an egg thing. Which comes first? How are they separated? It's an infinity loop. It's a deep paradox. Ding, ding, ding. We're over the truth. That's what deep paradox means. It means you're over the truth. So the number one reason why we need the competition is to alert us to the utility and the value of the training. I need to know if my training is working. Even when I was not formally competing, I still had an informal competition with myself. I still was able to set loose dates to say, hey, I think in this 3-week period in September, I want to try and set a PR on this 8-kilometer trail route that I've been running for the past 3 months in the summer. And then I would find my way on one of those days and I would go hard and I would set that PR. And then I would use that motivation to come back in the spring and try to go even faster. So that would fuel my off-season training. And every time I set one of these informal goals, I was able to beat it, which just gives me a positive signal that, hey, when you go out into the woods and you're running hard. When you come back and you cross train, you're benefiting your muscles. You're getting better at this. You're actually getting better at this, which is important. We don't just want to train and waste our time by not progressing. Progressing is a very important part of your process, right? Otherwise, how do you know if it's working? How do you know if it's doing good? How do you know if it's doing the intention that you want? Like, if we want to exercise for our spirits, that means reaching towards our true potential in body, mind, and spirit. So the body's got to perform better. The body's got to perform better. But we also have the ability to bring our mental frames and our spiritual willpower to these competitions in terms of adverse effects, in terms of ways in which we compete and complete the races. What do we do when we want to quit? What do we do when the excuses start to raise their ugly heads? What happens when it's not so easy in the body, right? And when we are training, we have the ability to change the game in the middle, which I think is one of the benefits of training. Like, if I set myself up in a training session to go, let's say it's like a really hard workout, and I show up and the body is like tired, it's fatigued, maybe I didn't stretch, maybe I didn't sleep well, and like I'm supposed to go as hard as possible, but I realize in the first like 5% of the workout, like this is not going to work. I want the flexibility to be able to pivot, do something different, and then come back to try again to hit that harder workout. So no matter how seriously we take our training, we always have the ability to modify and adapt the operation of the training, like what we're actually doing and to what effect. That's malleable. You're starting to see why we might need the competition, guys. Like, I can't do that in a competition. The terms are set, the rules are there, the distance, the time, the day, it's all determined for me, and I cannot shift it. I cannot change the game in the middle. I have to change myself. I either have to change my tactics, I got to change the way in which I'm moving. All this is going to come out in a race context because that's just the competition that I do, but it's really for any contest. I have to change my mindset. I got to bring more spiritual energy into it. I got to find a different purpose. I have to find deeper meaning. The numbers are not just going to be there for me that day, right? So what does the competition do? The competition forces me to bring the best of myself, even when the conditions are not appropriate. Because in training, you're not going to go as hard. You're just not. You're not going to go as hard. You're not going to have that pressure. So we need the competition as a corollary to the training to inform us about the value and utility of the training. So this is the number one reason why we need the competition when we are exercising spiritually. We need a test. We need a test. We need a challenge. We need to see if the work that we've been doing in mind, body, and spirit is going to pay off. Number one. And this is going to bring us back to our first concept here. Let's go to the notes, which I got. Hey, I only got 3 notes. I got 5 lines of text. I got 3 notes. Let's go. I got on competition podcast. That's line 1. Line 2, concepts and quotes. We're going to go to this one, to the ancient Greeks, to this connection between agon, which is the contest and competition, and ascesis, which is a process of rigorous self-discipline in pursuit of spiritual purity, right? So the ancient Greeks, the ones that gave us athletic competition, one of the cardinal virtues, one of the cardinal reasons why athletics was promoted as a paragon of moral virtue was the contest, was the agon. Think about the word agony for a second and where it might come from. It comes from here. It comes from the struggle and the toil and the discipline and the determination to fight through of the athlete in the contest, in the performance, right? The training was so valuable, right? The training is where you generated the character, and the contest is where you displayed the character, where the character was tested. So you have these mini little tests and these mini little lessons throughout the training, and then you're working up to the big challenge, And in this time period, athletic training was linked to military leadership, political leadership, and just social prestige. So when you're thinking about like the training, think like battle training. It's really good to train with your weapons. It's really good to train in formation. It's really good to be strong and fast and durable and to have endurance. But what happens when it's the battle and it really matters? Like what happens then? That's the contest. The contest is this pressure-filled challenge where we are being kind of forced to bring our best. And the reason why the agon is so important is because it's public. That's why the competition is a different style of feedback than the training. It's because of that public nature. And I recognize we live in a world with Strava and Aura and Garmin and social media. So everyone is sharing their workout, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the difference between getting up and running a marathon on a training day and getting up and running the Chicago Marathon on the day that the Chicago Marathon is run. These are not the same things. You don't have the public pressure with you. If you just run up and say, I'm going to run the marathon in my training and it's not going your well, you just reschedule it and you do it again. If you're running the Chicago Marathon and you don't have it that day, you have a bad time. You DNF, you bonk. And guess what? Thousands and thousands and thousands of people see the failure. So the reason why the public element is so important is because you risk humiliation and shame. You risk bringing the worst part of your character on a day that everybody is watching you. On a day that everyone is watching you and you told them, hey, show up so you can watch me. You do not have that kind of a pressure inside of a training session. And that pressure is what we want. I don't want to see what kind of a character I can bring in the easy moments of my life because that's really not where character is tested. Character is tested in the struggle. Character is tested when it's hard, when it's difficult. Like when my... How many university things do we want to talk about right now? Like, it's easy to do the easy thing. It's hard to do the hard thing. Okay? And if we want our characters to shine, if we want to see what our characters are made of, we have to throw ourselves into the hard space. We got to throw ourselves into the arena where we relinquish control and where we're forced to do it in front of everybody else. And this is related to spiritual purity, this idea of ascesis, because, hey, the discipline, the training, if I say that I'm going to show up and I'm going to compete, I had better well make sure that I'm doing the work every single day to make sure that when I show up, I'm not going to be humiliated. I'm going to be able to be proud of my efforts. And that does not mean having to have a good result, always. Because if we are exercising for body, mind, and spirit and bringing the best of each one of those, what that allows us to do is to notice that the body, the mind, and the spirit, sometimes they can all be aligned together, driving towards excellence. But most of the time, there's kind of like a battle in between these three disparate yet similar parts of myself, right? So the competition just gives me a very concentrated experiment in character challenge where the body may be failing, so I have to start using my mind and my spirit to overcome it. Maybe the body's actually okay, but the mind is the thing that's starting to like put excuses in your head and sabotage you with weird pains, like in the body, even though your body's fine. And then it's about like your spirit and your body coming together to push through a little bit of that adversity. And this happens in the training, but again, it's not as intense, and you're not going to get the same kind of feedback. You're not going to get the same kind of feedback. So if ascesis is our aim, rigorous, disciplined training in pursuit of spiritual purity, I kind of need a really hard challenge where everybody can see me so that I can know if I'm actually improving myself in body, mind, and spirit. I need to be able to see. I need to be able to be unafraid to show up and display myself in front of other people. This is one of the reasons why the athletes were viewed as heroes, guys, is because they were willing to sacrifice, struggle, and bear the risk of the outcome of their public performance. So we need we need the competition. And you can informally create a competition with yourself, but at some point, you do need to feel the real thing. You do need to feel the real thing. Then that sort of leads into like, okay, but like you're telling me to enter into this outcome-oriented, goal-oriented outcome, and you're telling me that the reason why it's important is because it's public and because I'm doing it in front of everybody. So how is that not going to start to tilt my ego towards the race outcome or the competition outcome? Okay, let's go to the Tao. Let's go to the Tao to fill in the next part. And this is just a line from the Tao. I forget exactly from which one. I probably should have put that in the note, but no problem. No one's going to accuse me of plagiarism. So we're good. So here's the quote. He strikes it as a matter of necessity. He strikes it, but not from a wish for mastery. Okay. And this is a line that talks about war. So like, why would you go to war? I don't go to war because I want to become the best at killing people. I go to war because it's a necessity, because it's been brought upon me and I don't have any other alternatives and I don't have any other choices. If you are training in athletics, this is you. The reason you want to go into competition is because it's a necessity. You have to do it. You don't desire the accolades and the medals and the applause. You recognize that this is part of the deal. That if I want to pursue an athletic lifestyle and have the benefits of character growth, spiritual development, personal health, and transcendence, I'm not going to get the full package without the competition. Athletes compete. You train to compete. Now, the competitions, they can change over time, and what the meaning of these competitions can do can change over time. But you have to be in the arena. You have to be in the arena. He strikes it as a matter of necessity, okay? So even if it's this activity that you maybe begrudgingly hesitant towards or resistant to, guess what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's a necessity. The ancient Greeks, the ones who gave it to us as a tool for personal transcendence, made sure competition was baked into the equation, and they're right for all of the reasons that we've already gone over. So this allows you to then start bringing in an entirely different ideal of why we do the competition. So the competition is a necessary public performance of the work that I do in the shadows. And the work that I do in the shadows is improving myself in body and mind and spirit. So the competition then becomes a place for me to overcome myself and for me to see myself either failing or succeeding at overcoming myself. Has nothing to do this. Now we're getting somewhere, because this has nothing to do with external competitors or opponents, or even really like the external challenge. Like, it's just there to create the proper boundaries, right? And when I have the proper boundaries placed upon my action, I can experience and realize total freedom. I can realize total freedom. So the athletic competition once or twice a year is the proper boundaries that you have to show up. Again, it's race context. Show up at the starting line at the time designated, run the distance that you said you were going to run, cross the finish line, accept your time. That is going to allow you, with the proper space inside, to experience yourself, right? And in our group conversation, we were talking about how exercise is spiritual for you. And the common theme was that it's a mirror. Exercise is a mirror that shows me the true version of myself. That's what the training and the physical activity does. Competition is the harshest and most brutal of all of the mirrors. Okay? But instead of putting that mirror onto the outcome, we put the mirror onto ourselves in our process, in our journey. So this past race, one of the things that I was working on, and you can listen to the past episode, episode 67 here, was an internal interrogation between selfishness and selflessness, in terms of going hard for myself or giving a bit of myself away for other people. And that was the reason I did the race. Yes, it was a challenge against nature. Yes, it was a challenge against distance and time. But that's the real aim. That was the real reason that I did this. And so every competition becomes a chance to examine myself. And we have to take the pressure off of the result in order for us to see the value. And this is my final note here. And we'll be driving to the end because I have to host my next group call in 37 minutes. And I got one little thing I still have to prepare for that. But this comes from the book that most influenced me last year. The book that was my favorite book and that totally changed a lot of things. It was just the most impactful book by far in so many different areas, which was John Holt in his book, How Children Learn. And he makes this incredible point about when you are learning anything, the most important things you can do are clear away expectations and open space for exploration. Okay? So we need to open space for exploration and we need to clear expectations. So if the competition is this harsh mirror that shows me about myself and allows me to learn who I am and learn how to overcome myself, well, one of the reasons why I don't learn the lessons is because I put too much pressure on the outcome and I don't allow space for open exploration within the activity. So what we actually need to do for the competition is approach it like an experiment of self, right? It's an experiment of self-examination. It's a crucible of self-examination for me to see myself trying to overcome myself. And if I am in the game of physical activity, utilizing it for character growth, spiritual development, and personal improvement, I need to put myself in the situation that's going to teach me the most about myself as often as possible. One of John Holt's really incredible observations about the way children learn is they don't learn in steps. They don't go step 1, step 2, step 3. they do, but it's not like I learned the first piece and then I learned the second piece and then I learned the third. What really happens is a gathering stage, a mass gathering of raw sensory data. If you think about the way in which like a toddler will come up against something new that they don't know, what do they do about it? They touch it. They try to make sounds with it. They might pick it up, right? They're going to put it in their mouth. Like they're just going to try and get as much information about the thing as possible before they even can conceive of how do I make it work, or how does it work, or what can I do with this thing. You just have to know you have to figure out what it is. And kids do this with everything because they don't, they have to learn. So if I want to learn about myself through physical activity, one of the most important things I can do is give myself mass, raw, sensory data without expectation so that I can see what this whole thing is. And if I want to use athletic training, well, it's a necessity that I compete, because without the competition, I don't gain the full value of the training. And I want to use the training. The truth is in the training, but then the truth's also in the competition. So because I am utilizing this to learn, I can open up what the competition means. It's just a place to look at myself, learn about myself in conditions that should bring about the type of challenge where I have to rise and overcome it. And the beautiful part about the competitions is you just don't know what happens. They're variable. They're so chaotic, and things that you don't even think are going to come are going to be the biggest factors, and you're going to have to deal with it in real time. That just does not happen on training runs. It doesn't happen in training sessions. And if it does, you have the ability to quit. You have the ability to stop. You have the ability to adapt and modify right then and there. You do not in an athletic contest. You don't change the rules of the game once the game is started. Sports 101. Okay? So with these ideas, the ancient Greeks telling us like, they're connected. The Tao saying there are things I would rather not do, but if I have to do them, I will do them as the necessity, not out of this desire to necessarily be the best at it. And the necessity is to just simply collect information about myself. Collect information about what I do when the pressure's on. What happens when I want to quit? What's going on in my mind? What happens like when I start to feel like low energy? What happens when my body starts to rebel and fight against me with pain and discomfort? What do I do? And then when I have the result of that, I can go back into the training and say, you know what I need to work on? Willpower. You know what I need to work on? Leg strength. You know what I need to work on? Mental framing. It's going to highlight the deficiencies in a way in which the training conceals. So again, there's this infinity. This is not an infinity loop. How do I do it? It's like, sorry. That's the infinity. There's an infinity loop between the utility of the training and the utility of the competition. And ultimately then it's the meaning of the training and the meaning of the competition. But we don't approach it as if we're interested in goals. That's number one. We approach it as curious artists expressing ourselves and as inquisitive scientists examining ourselves. So the competitions are expressions because I'm competing in something that I enjoy training in, and the competition is going to be sort of like a celebration of the ways in which I enjoy training. And then it's going to be this examination of self in order to learn the lessons. So that's why we want to compete, guys. That's why we want to compete. And now, having competed with groups, on teams, as a coach, by myself, I don't think we have anything to fear from competition. The fear is ourselves. When I say I'm hesitant of competition because everybody else is goal-oriented, that's just an insecurity of my own identity and who I am and why I do the things that I want to do. It shouldn't matter what other people do. I can create my own parameters of experience. I can rewrite the rules of the game before I enter it so that I can play it differently than everybody else. Even if we're all running the same race, I don't have to run it the same way that you do. And so what this ideal does is it blows open the ways in which competition can be engaged with. And sometimes it can be aimed at the body. Sometimes it can be aimed at the mind. Sometimes it can be aimed at the spirit. Sometimes it can be aimed just at camaraderie and community. Other times it's like a solo heroic mission. Like each competition can be its own little wrinkle. It can be its own little story. It can be its own little tangent in the journey that is your life of improving yourself in body, mind, and spirit. They are not the definitions. They are not the end goals. They are not the outcomes. They are elements of your process that are necessary. These are necessary elements of an athletic pursuit. So if you are training and you're not competing, you're missing out on the full value of your training. And if you're training for spiritual fulfillment, embodied knowledge, and to reach your full potential, you got to get into the game. All right, that's on competition, guys. I'd love to see you in one. If you don't know what kind of a competition you want to do, let me just throw one out there for you. Prairie on Fire, Backyard Ultra. A crew. Think about 30, 40 homies. All doing it for the reason that I just told you. All laughing, joking, hanging around at the campsite. Day or two before, day or two after. Having kids cheer you on. Having families there to support you. Having the most amount of love you've ever felt at any kind of an athletic competition. There's a lot of us that are going to be there. I'm going to make sure people from my group are there. I'm leading a whole bunch of, I'm so bad at this, tribal athletes to Prairie. My coach, Zach Hummel, he's going to bring a whole bunch of his guys. Second weekend of September, weekend after Labor Day, Cicero, Indiana, just north of Indianapolis. Put it on your radar. Get in contact with me if you already know you want in. Otherwise, let it marinate. We'll be back. I'll be back. Don't worry. I'll be back to remind you. But thanks so much, everybody, for listening. 68. We're on to episode 69 after this. Who knows what it's going to be, but I know that it will be a blast because we're doing it together. So I appreciate everybody. For the people who dropped in live on Twitter, thanks, homies. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace and love, team.